Bow, bow.
Get a little fluff.
Yeah, I'm always on my back.
You do that, yeah? No.
Are we live? Are we live? We think we are live. This is how we do it. Tim using his expert hair coiffing ability on Corinne Malcolm. We think we might be live. Let's
Welcome to the Hoka Coiffeteria.
The Coiffeteria. My YouTube is not fully live, so if somebody in the chat could please give us a confirmation one way or the other.
Oh, we're going live.
Does it feel like we're live?
It feels like the commercials are rolling.
Oh, the commercial's on.
We are golden.
Okay, game time, folks. Oh, my goodness. Okay, here we go, folks. Welcome to the 2024 Western States 100 live from the Hoka Saloon in the heart of Olympic Valley. I have sat at a lot of bars in my life. Trust me, folks, this might be the best bar I've ever sat at. This is absolutely incredible. It is Monday, June 24th. It's officially Western States Week, and we will be here all week to bring you the love and passion for this amazing race, the most important trail race in all of North America. Throughout race week, I'm going to be joined by an amazing group of co-hosts. As usual, you're used to them now. Corinne Malcolm here. Corinne, how are you? Good to see you again.
I am so good. I feel like we had a mini reprieve from a weekend of trailgating, and we are back and ready to go. The bangs are on point. I'm here for it.
Launching into another race week together. Wouldn't have it any other way. And also, for the first time joining us in Freetrail's coverage for Western States is none other than Mr. Tim Tollefson. Tim, it is great to see you again. Thank you so much for hanging out with us.
It is an honor to be here, and since I can't figure out the race side, I'm hoping that I can figure out the commentary side of this event, because I'm going to go out on a limb and say this is the best event in the entire world.
Yes.
But yes, I'm happy to be here.
We're going to talk about that in just a sec. I do want to give a big thank you to Hoka and Coffee Bar for accommodating us here this week. Everybody will know Coffee Bar, the best coffee shop in all of Olympic Valley, a place that we have all hung out for hours and hours, stealing their Wi-Fi, smashing their cold brews, having a frosty cold one every once in a while, and they have been gracious to open their doors to us throughout race week. Another thing that I've said a million times, thanks to Hoka, this is a dream come true for 8-year-old Debo who grew up binging Sports Illustrated and ESPN Sports Center. I feel like Scott Van Pelt at the Masters right now. This couldn't get any better. It's officially Western States Week. Before we get any further, a big thank you to the people behind the cameras here. Mr. Ryan Thrower, pinning on a bib this weekend. What number are you, buddy?
398.
Number 398, the lucky number 398, Ryan Thrower here in studio, working his tail off as usual, getting ready to pin a bib on and take that 100-mile journey from Olympic Valley to Auburn. We couldn't be more excited for him. And joining us for the first time, Mr. Tony with a Sony, Tony DePasquale, icon of the Bay Area trail community, another great creator in the space. We're grateful for your help, Tony. And of course, last but not least, my beautiful wife, Harmony, the glue that holds the team together. It
Truly
takes a village, and we are grateful for everybody's hard work in pulling this together. Quickly, a run of show before we get into everything. Again, we're going to be here all week. We're starting with the top 10 storylines of the 2024 Western States 100. We may or may not have a very special guest joining us in the back half of today's episode. It's a little bit of a seeky, but, you know, stick around. Don't log out. In fact, actually what you should do is copy the URL out of your dashboard on YouTube and send it to all your group texts. Email it to your entire family. Tell them to jump on Freetrail's coverage of the top 10 storylines, and they may have a secret surprise here at the end of today's show. Tomorrow, we're going to actually go back in the archive. We're going to go into the time capsule. We're going to talk about the history of the Western States 100. This is the 51st year, and Mr. John Trent, the unofficial historian of the Western States 100, is going to join us to share some of the best stories from the history. We also have some very special guests we'll tell you about later. Wednesday, we're going to be doing our full deep dive race preview where myself, Tim, Corinne are going to sort of chat through all the characters in the field, the dark horses, the potential breakout performers, and rattle off sort of a deeper preview of what we might expect to happen. Thursday, we're going to wrap things up. We start with the group run with Hoka here at Coffee Bar at 7:30 in the morning. So if you're in town, please do join us for that. At 11 a.m., at 3 p.m., we're going to go live with our fantasy prediction show. That's going to wrap up our pre-race coverage. We're going to be joined by the good people at Between Two Pines, Death March Running Company. We're going to put together a great program on Thursday. And in fact, I also reached out to Joe Uhan today. He may be coming on Thursday too, and we could do a really deep course analysis for people who've never been here or who want to geek out on Western States. Joe wrote the iconic articles on the Western States course
that have been cited so many times in our pre-race interviews, truly cited. I think historically when we do our elite interviews,
Yes.
9 out of 10 will cite Joe Uhan's original posts from iRun Far.
I have probably read these posts 10, 15 times each. It's a 2-part series. It's called The Western States Killing Machine. You can find it at iRun Far. Just Google The Western States Killing Machine, iRun Far. You'll find them both. And give it a read before Joe joins us on Thursday, because we'll talk all about the course and what these runners will be confronting. Finally, fantasy. Go to fantasy.freetrail.com. Pick 10 deep. We only do that for a couple of races throughout the year. Obviously, Western States justifies it. It's an incredibly deep field, and we do have prize packages for the top 3. They're going to get a full head-to-toe kit from Hoka. We also are getting brand new fresh white Freetrail bucket hats, sleeves, socks. So we're going to send some great prize packages out. Fantasy.freetrail.com. And while you're there, a very important new thing. If you see the tab at the top that says Stats, then click Splits, navigate to the Western States 100, and you can see that our boy Travis Longcar, the king of trail running software, he's a brilliant person. He created an amazing new tool that we can use to analyze and compare some of the great performances and stats and splits from the history of the Western States 100. That covers a lot of stuff. Launching into it, before we get to the top 10 storylines, I think for our audience here, some people might be new to Freetrail, some people might be new to us. I felt like it may be fun to share our personal stories with the race because it runs the gamut. Maybe, Tim, we can start with you.
Oh man, that's some pressure. So my name is Tim Tollefson, and I essentially am a quasi-local of the Auburn area. That's where I grew up, and actually in middle school and high school competed on that Placer High School track. And as I got into sport, I knew about Western States. My coaches in high school had done it, which is kind of crazy to have cross-country kids already indoctrinated into the 100-mile distance. But I got into the sport in about 2014, and I actively chose not to participate in this race. I think it was a little too close to home. I was also honestly afraid. The stories I'd heard, the heat, and it wasn't until 2021 that I finally took my first crack at it, about 8 years into my career. And it went about the way it normally does for people. You go in with big dreams, you bite off a little too much, and then the second half of the race just punishes you. And
45 minutes at Cal 2 from memory?
I had my longest ever pit stop at Cal 2.
You got to give a shout out
45
to
minutes.
the gal there who refused to cut your wristband
What's
off.
really cool is Joanne, the medical director there, she is racing her first ever Western States this year. And I told her, I'm going to show up at Cal 2, and I'm going to be there if you need to cry, if you need a hug, but I'm going to shove you out of that aid station, and you are not staying.
That's a top storyline right there, Joanne.
I'm surprised you didn't list that one. But yeah, so basically, I've had the ability to race all over the world, but this is one race in particular that still has my number. I have not figured it out. I'm hoping spending time with the athletes that are going to come through the studio this week, maybe I can pick up some tips, and as I age, maybe I can get back in the race someday.
A quick update on Weight Watchers. For those who don't know, our boy Ryan Thrower was 31st on the wait list after the lottery. 31st or 32nd. He was 32nd. He is now in the race. I'm not sure how much deeper it's gone since then. Give an update.
So yes, all of our fans out there, which is incredible how many people have been tuning in. I get messages every day, all day long about where are you on the wait list? So the Weight Watchers is a campaign we started to celebrate the men and women on the wait list of Western States, which actually play a very pivotal role for this race to maintain our 369 person cap. We could go into that later, but there were 75 of us, and Ryan got in. Only one other person has gotten in on the wait list into the actual race since Ryan got in almost 2 weeks ago. And we're 4 days from the cutoff, 1 p.m. on Friday, where someone could get in. I think we might get 1 or 2 more in there. And if so, I want to find those people here in Olympic Valley, and we are going to celebrate them. But yeah, it's been a wild ride.
In general, though, the wait list didn't go very deep this year.
It did not. So right
you
now,
were 70th or something,
I was
right?
68th at the beginning, and Ryan was 32nd. We're now 33 have gotten in. And I think some of that is that post-pandemic, there was more movement than usual. So there was a year that 75 people. It went through full 75. But I think this year we were seeing this gravitating back towards kind of what we would expect to see normally.
I can't believe you barely got in.
I mean, we
dude.
told him at the lottery, guaranteed,
he's in.
book your
He's
flight,
in.
book everything.
I went up on stage at the lottery. Ryan wasn't even in attendance. I went up on stage to accept basically your invitation into the race, thinking it was a foregone conclusion.
And it
on
ended
the
up being
skin of your teeth.
Ended up being a nail biter.
Yeah. Anyway, Corrine, share your story with the race.
Yeah, so speaking of wait lists, that's how I got in for my first Western States as well. So my introduction to Western States is actually from dear friend, first ever trail running training partner, and the one and only Nikki Kimball, who has an illustrious career here at the Western States 100. I distinctly remember sitting in bed in Bozeman, Montana, refreshing Twitter because she was going for her 10th top 10 in a row. And I couldn't sleep until I knew that she had made it to the track. And I remember seeing a tweet come through from the I Run Far team saying, you know, that she had made it to, I can't remember, mile 80 or so, Green Gate, and she was asking for burgers. And I was like, you get that woman home. You get her to the track now. So she really like launched me into this ultra running journey out of the Nordic skiing world. I was a 2 tickets in the lottery. Drawn like
That's what I have.
drawn pretty high on the wait list. I got in the week of Canyons 100K in 2018 and ran 2 years in a row, 2 top 10 finishes in a row. And you know, I'm hungry to eventually go back. Those were years where the women's field was.
No, you're not allowed to.
Those
we
were
worked together on
Those were
race
the
day.
years where the women's field was continuing to progress and get faster and faster, but now what they're doing is so much faster than that. And I'm curious, like, faster as a master eventually is my goal. I just turned 34, and I would love to come back in 10 years, you know, and be faster as a master and see what I could do. Because I ran 20 hours on the nose 2 years in a row in 2 completely different conditions. Super hot my first year, more of a mild year my second year. Did not take advantage of any of the mild weather. Ran the exact same time. So I would love to come back eventually and try to be faster as a master.
Well, it's so hard to get this race right. You said that you haven't had your day here. You said that you know you can do better. I certainly feel that way in my journey too. So just saying a couple of words about my experience at Western States. I got in way back in the day when you could qualify at a Montreal Ultra Cup race that was only 50 miles. One of the biggest wins of my career, especially in the early years, was I won the Leona Divide 50 miler. Totally, you know, surprised myself. This was 2012, got myself in with only 6 weeks to go, sort of the equivalent of the spacing that people get from golden tickets at Canyons. Was lucky to finish 7th that first year, suffered so hard in the back half of that race. Came back, got 5th the year later. Tony's gonna put up a picture here of me at the finish line in 2014, 10 years ago. I'm going to look unrecognizable. I probably look 10 years older than I do now, given the fact that I had the scraggliest, most atrocious beard. My wife is cringing here in the audience because nobody told me, but apparently I looked completely awful with the beard. But the point was, that beard carried me to a podium finish here at Western States. And this photograph with Craig Thornley, it was in the early days of his tenure as the race director. Ted Knutson texted me this a couple of weeks ago, and I was like, oh, we have to use this in the broadcast for a couple of reasons. Number one, I look like an idiot, okay? Let's admit it. But also, number two, there's nobody at the finish line. And I finished 3rd and only 10 years ago, and we know now, Corrine, we get to sit on the track together greeting all the top 10 finishers for the men and women. But there was more people, you know, probably for the 24-hour finishers than there were there for the podium finishers only 10 years ago. It just speaks to how big the race has become, and certainly something that's touched all of our lives independently, and something that we would all encourage you to experience yourself. I know it's very hard to get into. It can be frustrating for a lot of people. That doesn't stop you from coming out, enjoying it, volunteering, crew, pace. Just come out and spectate. You'll never regret it.
The chat is really into the beard. I just want to put that out there. Harmony, I know you have maybe differing opinions about said beard, but the chat's into it.
And if I'm not mistaken, that was before you and I both got into the sport, right?
Must have been.
2013?
My first ultra was 2016 at Chuckanut,
So
50K,
this is-
and then Gorge 100K like 3 weeks later.
So this is why you are our fearless leader and our elder.
Yeah, right,
So
okay.
thank you for showing us the way.
And then I came back in 2015 and got a hot DNF at Michigan Bluff. So anyway, I've experienced it all. So 2 finishes, 3 finishes, that equals 7. So we do have some experience, not only as media commentators, but we've also run the race ourselves. You know,
We've made it from point A to point B. We've tried to not make it from point A to point B, and we're happy every year to get back. You and I keep getting grayer. I feel like we could start to age us via the finish line interview photos. I think at this point we've got a nice collage going. We'll be back in the same Hawaiian shirts you see us in every year. I'm really excited about it.
Quick story on that. I forgot my Hawaiian shirt
again. This is the third time.
So shout out to Carolyn Latham, a leader in the San Francisco trail running community. She is pulling an emergency.
She's making you a third shirt.
Swing by my house so that she can come deliver it to me at TrailCon on Wednesday. So anyway, shout out Carolyn Latham. Okay, guys, we've established our credibility. Now let's talk about some of the stories. Before we do, just want to give a big thank you to Hoka. Again, they have made all this possible for us, and we are just so grateful and so happy that we can share our love of the sport based on their support of our coverage here. Again, we're broadcasting from the Hoka Saloon in the heart of Olympic Valley. Come join us, like I said, on Thursday morning. Some of the best trail characters are going to be at that Hoka Shakeout Run, 7:30 a.m. from the coffee bar. So if you're here in Olympic Valley, don't miss out. They are going to be doing a demo of the new Speedgoat 6, probably the most popular trail shoe in the world. This is the next iteration of that. You can also explore some other products from Western States partners, GOO and Ultimate Direction are also going to be on hand, and they'll have some complimentary treats and coffees and stuff here from Coffee Bar. Also, you may have seen on social media that Hoka's just unveiled the highly anticipated Hoka Tecton X 2.5, the shoe that Jim Walmsley won when he finally won the UTMB last August. Those shoes are only available to Western States runners. They can be claimed at the Fleet Feet booth at the expo here at Western States. But for those who are not running Western States, fear not. That Tecton X2 or Tecton X3 actually is coming out in August with the worldwide release. So that's just around the corner. Of course, visit Hoka.com to check out all their awesome products, the Speedgoat 6 and otherwise. Thank you to Hoka. Launching into the top 10 stories of the 2024 Western States 100, we are going to count down from 10 to 1. Number 10. There will be a new champion this year, Corrine. No M1, no F1. Get us started on what that means.
I mean, it's always interesting, right? I think there's two things that happen. One, there's no one in the race who is, quote unquote, the defending champion from the year before. That takes pressure off of someone, you know, so to speak. But this is kind of a trend that we're seeing over the last couple of years where F1 and M1 haven't returned. They kind of made their peace with the race. Ruth Croft, it took her 2 times to get that win. And then she's taken some time away. We saw Jim win, taking some time away. Adam Peterman get injured, etc. So I think that Courtney's focusing on Hard Rock this year. So I do think it changes the flavor a little bit. We do love to see as many of our top 10 returners as possible. I think we're 6 and 6 on for returners this year, which is pretty good. But I do think we're seeing people kind of make their mark and then go towards some other things, which is a big change from years past where people are coming back year after year after year. We do still have some 3-timers and 4-timers and 5-timers in the returning top 10, but it does change the flavor slowly when, you know, the likes of Tom Evans from the win last year or Courtney Dauwalter from her win last year do not come back to try to repeat one more time.
I think this could play, or it will play into one of our storylines later, and these winners, M1 and F1, may end up regretting not taking their spot coming back in. But I think it's pretty awesome because really this opens up the door for those first-timers, maybe the overlooked, the underdogs, the walk-ons, and it's their time to really kind of take a crack at this and maybe cement their name into, you know, the history of Western States. When you have a returning champion, everyone kind of defers and yields to what they do, and this really opens up that entire field where I think it's going to kind of, well, obviously we do have a few big names coming back, but it's I think it really just kind of opens up that strategy to not be like determined by one person that was so successful the year prior.
Right, that's what I was going to say is like in the competitive field with the elites, if the returning champion is there, they sort of probably have the center of gravity in the competitive field. Everybody's sort of marking that individual. This year and in the last 3 years, we should say, that has not existed. So for our viewers here, going back to 2022, we had no Jim Walmsley, no Beth Pascal returning. In 2023, we had no Adam Peterman, no Ruth Croft returning. This year, of course, we have no Tom Evans, no Courtney Dauwalter returning. So again, this is the 3rd year in a row without either champion, it definitely messes with the dynamic in the professional field, which might not be obvious.
It does, but I think it's also really cool. Last year in particular, I think it was in the men's field, we were going to have a brand new champion. No one in that field that was like going to be on the top step of that podium had won yet. Versus, this year we've got Jim Walmsley coming back, et cetera, which we're going to talk more about later. But Courtney last year coming back, a repeat champion. I think it is really, really cool when all of a sudden we know we are going to crown a first-time champion. That, to me, is very, very exciting.
Super, super cool. So, again, Jim Walmsley's coming back. He and Casey Lichtai are the only past champions in the field. But, again, he's got 3 victories, but not a returning champion. In fact, you guys want to guess what bib number he's wearing? Have you looked? Number 21, okay? Deion Sanders, Coach Prime, Jim Walmsley's rocking number 21 on Saturday. But yeah, just to sort of set the context for people who don't remember, I'm sure you do. Last year, unbelievable race. Courtney Dauwalter shattering Ellie Greenwood's untouchable course record, running 15:29 in cool conditions. One of the best performances in trail history. Will be tough for anybody in this field to match that, but I'm sure many people are looking forward to measuring themselves against that standard. Tom Evans, the 3rd Brit to win here behind Ellie Greenwood and Beth Pascal. I think he's the 3rd Brit to win at Western States. 4th fastest time ever. He's focusing on UTMB this year. You mentioned we have 6 and 6, so just going through it. Other non-returning top 10 runners from last year, Anthony Costales, who was on the podium, unfortunately was injured earlier this year, couldn't get himself ready. Mathieu Blanchard, the Frenchman, and Janusz Kowalczyk, the German.
And he's a recent withdrawal. He was dealing with some really bad plantar fasciitis and finally was like, you know what, I've got to take myself off the list.
Yeah. And then on the women's side, Katie Asmuth, 6th fastest time ever. She was 4th last year. 4th last year and ran the 6th fastest time ever. Is not returning, unfortunately. We love you, Katie.
She'll be here in person, but is just not ready to run 100 miles.
Right. Taylor Nowlin, not returning. And
pregnant with twins.
Yes. So, yeah. Good luck.
Pretty exciting reason not to be on the start line.
Yeah. Shout out to Taylor. So we will crown a new favorite. We'll share our opinion about those. Or we're crowning a new champion. We'll share our opinion on who the favorites might be later on in the week. But even without M1 and F1, it's going to be a freaking battle on Saturday, and we are so excited. Somebody who is returning, F2, Katie Scheid. Corrine, get us started.
Oh, my.
This is our 9th storyline.
Goodness. This is, on to storyline number 9 for those counting at home. The return of Katie Scheid. She's laying low. I don't expect we'll see very much of her this week until the Friday kind of welcome ceremony. But returning, and I think whenever you're the top returner, there's always a question mark, like, hey, you going to move up that final podium spot? She's got some unfinished business. We should add that she did also go under Ellie Greenwood's course record last year, dropping our dear friend Topher Gaylord in the process as he paced her. He's like, really rope-a-doped me there. Like, just totally left him in the dust on her way in from Ruby Point when she realized that she was still under Ellie Greenwood's course record splits. We watched her absolutely decimate the field at the Canyons 100K endurance runs by UTMB back in April, which I think was kind of like a big whoa moment for all of us. She didn't need to go out and bury herself. She didn't need to go out and blow the field away. There was nothing to prove there, but she just wanted a long, hard run on the course, and she got just that. She's been logging mega training over in Flagstaff, Arizona, kind of supported by the community there, including our dear friends Abby and Cordis Hall. But I have to imagine if I was Katie Scheid, I'd be laying really low too, because everyone is going to be thinking that this is her race to lose, and there are some other very fast women who are going to be nipping at her heels.
That's what I was going to say. I feel like she comes in as the clear favorite, the 2nd fastest ever on the course by a decent margin. I mean, she was 4 minutes under Ellie Greenwood's 2012 course record, which nobody had been close to aside from Courtney Dauwalter. It seems like Courtney and Katie are sort of in a league of their own right now, but 100 miles is 100 miles. You got to run every step of it. Tim, any comments?
And it is wild to think that Ellie Greenwood's course record, which essentially was like the equivalent of the unbreakable record of Scott Jurek, was broken by Katie, and she lost the race. Like, that's just insane. How does that happen? It happens because of a woman named Courtney Dauwalter.
But here's something interesting that I've been thinking about, and maybe this is where you were headed.
Yep.
Sorry to cut
No,
you
you're
off.
good.
But this idea that, like, Courtney in my mind is that even when we get a Courtney that's maybe only 90%, maybe only 80%, she's still, like, leagues better than the rest of us. And I say that as like a female trying to compete in the sport. And I kind of feel like Katie is making her way into that category. This category of, you know, if we get a Katie Scheid that's 90%, that Katie Scheid might still be way better than the rest of that women's field over the 100-mile distance. And it's like, that's Courtney Dauwalter territory, and I do think Katie Scheid might be entering her Courtney Dauwalter era.
Yeah, and you know, as someone personally fresh off the Katie Scheid trail kill, because she not nipped me, she punished me at Canyons 100K. I was just blown away at what she did there. And then she even chalked it up as, you know, kind of like a basic day. She didn't make any fuss about running one of, honestly, the historically fast times in the history of our sport. If I would say on the performance index, it ranks up there as one of the highest. And she came out of that Canyons 100K, launched straight into basically 6 more solid weeks of training, where 6 days after that race, for reference, the men's champion Rod Farvard and myself were on like a 6-mile shakeout run, thinking about like, oh man, we're still sore. And then we opened Strava and she'd logged like a 25-mile run.
I heard she's put up numbers recently.
And so I have to imagine that she and her coach decided, hey, we know what we're capable of there, but let's go for broke. Let's push the envelope. She's young. She is a student of the sport. She does everything. She's aims
a pro. She's a
pro. And I think they probably just decided, hey, let's go for it. You know, this is the year. And I think Sunday morning last year, we thought 15:29 is never going to be touched. And then after Canyons this year, I think a lot of people started saying, maybe 15:29 can't last 1 year. It's wild.
Yeah, it's interesting. We can talk about this later in the week, but last year was a uniquely fast year. We didn't see the men's course record go down. In fact, it wasn't even very close. Tom Evans was about 30 minutes behind Jim's course record, but Courtney and the whole women's top 10 was freakishly fast.
17:30 for 10th or something. Like, that is 90 minutes faster than ever done before.
Right. So anyway, the conditions will play into the fact of whether any course record is in play this week. So we'll talk about that here in a little bit. But Katie Scheid, storyline number 9. Welcome back to Western States. There's a great history of people training in Flagstaff, coming here and having great success.
Some other heavy hitters have been there in the last month or so as well. So I am very, very excited.
Not from Flagstaff. In number 8 storyline from Omaha, Nebraska, Casey Lichtai returns for 10 years in a row to get her 1,000-mile buckle. Who wants to get us started?
Incredible. I think this is just a major testament to just her consistency as an athlete. For someone to stay healthy, and I'll put a pin in that, but for someone to stay healthy for 10 years and be able to complete 10 races, especially 10 Western States, is almost unheard of. And she has dealt with actually some serious injuries across this decade. However, perhaps it's her background as a physical therapist, she has done every little thing she needed to get back. And some of those years, she barely made it back to the start line, but she got it done. And she checked her ego. She's a previous champion, and I'm so stoked to see her take her 10th shot.
She is a buckle of every color, and she's very proud of it, which I think is really, really cool. I know that
Say more about what that means.
So for those of you who do not know, you are awarded the most incredible belt buckle as your finishing kind of memento, trophy, etc. People wear them during lottery day in particular as a good luck omen. But there's a winner buckle. It says winner on it. There is the silver buckle for the sub 24-hour finish, and then there is the what color is it technically? Bronze, and that is anyone who finishes between 24 hours and the 30-hour cutoff. And so she's got a buckle of every color. She's got a winner one, a sub 24-hour one, and a nice bronze belt buckle as well. Plus a cougar.
All right, so I have some historical stats here for our audience. First, just want to establish Casey has finished 6th, 2nd, 1st, 16th, 12th, 3rd, 10th, 18th, 12th. So here she is coming back for number 10 in a row, which I will go out on a limb and say will never happen again.
I'm going to debate you on that.
Okay. Let's debate.
Okay.
Let's go there.
So
10 in a row or 10 finishes ever?
Oh,
10 in a row, I mean.
10 in a row. Okay. Maybe I'm going to crawl back in my hole.
Okay, but no, but what you're saying is that
I do think we're going to
can
see
accumulate 10.
We are going to see people that accumulate 10, which is incredibly hard.
Craig
and-
Thornley has 9. Like he's going to get a 10th
Right, of
eventually,
course,
right?
Yeah.
Yeah, and if you have 9, you are allowed into the race onto that your 10th
Which is
year.
why Casey's in the field.
Correct.
So for our viewing audience here, if you have 9 finishes, you can be an automatic entrant into Western States, which is of course a coveted position.
And
to
so
have.
my take on that is that I believe what we started this whole kind of night with was that we have no M1 or F1 coming back. However, if we get a young gun, an M1 or an F1 that cares about this race, I believe they are the only ones that really have a chance because they're going to come in with the best opportunity to get top 10 multiple years in a row.
I think Emily Hawgood is probably, or Tyler Green are the current people in the M and F bibs
Correct.
this year who are likely to continue forward. Particularly, I think Emily Hawgood. I could see Tyler shifting away to other interests. He's going for his 5th finish in a row versus Emily Hawgood, who's going for her 4th top 10 in a row. So Emily Hawgood could not only be potentially 10 years in a row, but also she could be one of the few people left who could do 10 top 10s in a row. She lives down the road. She loves this race. Unless she wins this year, I imagine she's going to keep coming back.
I can't wait to talk more about Emily later in the week. But so for our viewing audience here, just some historical context. Ian Sharman is the only person who's done this recently from 2010 to 2019. He got 10 in a row, and I think like 8 of those were top 10s. If I recall correctly, he didn't finish top 10 his 9th finish, but he was automatic because of that.
And that was a crazy race because it was like Tyler Green was outside the top 10. There were like 6 men who were finishing between like 8th and 14th or whatever, and they all dropped their pacers between Rugby Point and the finish because they were all gutting it out to try to squeeze into the top 10. So
anyway, incredible. Yeah, Ian Sharman, one of the hallmark athletes of Western States, at least during my era in the sport. Some other people who deserve recognition. Megan Canfield, the queen of Western States. She did 11 in a row. She has 13 total finishes. So those 11 in a row, I think, were basically all top 10s. And then Nikki Kimball, your idol and mentor, did it from 2004 to 2015. But of course, 2008, the race was canceled due to wildfire. She got 10 top 10s in a row. So,
yeah, and I want to say there's a really cool audio like project that Billy Yang put together, I think in 2018, and it's Megan Canfield, Courtney DeWalter, and I. And it's like me being a brand new person, Courtney going after a win, and Megan Canfield, the queen, as kind of like this amazing person in the sport. And they put together a really cool audio story of the 3 of us in our race experience, including audio from in the race. And it's a really beautiful little hour if anyone wants a good tearjerker.
amazing.
I think we should also shout out the 2 men going for their 10th finishes. I noticed that there are 2 men in the field along with Casey going for their 10th, so they will be getting their 1,000-mile belt buckle, which is a special buckle given to you if you finish the 10. And it's Ken Ward, who's 67 years old. And the funny story is I actually met his pacer in the bathroom at Broken Arrow this weekend, and he mentioned, he's like, you got to look out. He's 67 years old. He's going for his 10th finish, which is pretty fascinating. You never know who you're going to meet in the bathroom here in Olympic Valley. But then the second one is Phil Sanderson, 56 years old, and he is actually going for the Grand Slam of ultra running this year. And so he already did Old Dominion. He's going to do Western States, and then I believe, if I'm correct, Vermont and Wasatch will be his next 2.
Yeah.
So I should point out too, if you want to learn more about either of those gentlemen and Casey Lichtig, we will have a piece up on the freetrail.com website tomorrow from the one and only Ruby Wiles, covering our 3 athletes going for their 10th finish in a row.
Good plug. Freetrail.com for all the great trail running content. But that wraps up number 8, of course, Casey Lichtig, Western States Hall of Famer, going for number 10. Casey, we're rooting for you. Get the winner's buckle, the sub 24-hour buckle, the bronze buckle, and the 1,000-mile buckle. Let's make it a quadfecta,
That's
Casey.
so cool.
Yes.
4 buckles.
You're going to need a bigger
She's
house.
got to get the 2,000-mile buckle. Okay, she goes top 10. Let's keep the streak alive. Okay, moving on to number 7, moms in the elite field. Corrine, this is something I know you're passionate about. Get us started.
This is, when we had our meeting about what were going to be the top 10 stories, I was like, I've got 2 for you. One of them being the moms in the field. And there are many, many moms in the field. Actually, Harmony and I were like, can we figure out how many moms are in the field? And I was doing some Strava stalking and some Instagram stalking. It was a whole situation. I didn't make it that far. I made it like 33 names deep. But we do have a number of moms racing for the top of the podium spots, which include Esther Chillog, last year's 3rd place finisher, Mama 2, Rachel Drake, Mama Little Lou, Kareth Arnold, who will be racing 9 months postpartum,
How did she
getting
qualify?
a golden ticket 7 months postpartum at the Canyons 100K. Really excited to see her race. Lauren Puretz, who got that golden ticket at Black Canyon. She is a mom of 2 and a doctor. She's an OB-GYN doc who's probably like in surgery right now before she flies out to Olympic Valley. Kelly Angel, who's amazing. We're going to have her on a panel later this week because she originally got in through an Ultra Trail World Tour spot as an Australian runner, as a Hoka runner. And then the pandemic happened. And then she had one boy. And then like Australia was still kind of shut down, and then she had another baby boy. And so she is here with both boys this year off of that pregnancy deferral. And there are lifetime pregnancy deferrals for mothers into Western states, which is so special and cool that you can always get your spot back in. You just got to get that qualifier, that 100K mark to get back into the race the following year. So Kelly is back off of her pregnancy deferral. And then another mom to shout out is Sally McRae as well, who is back 10 years, I think, after one of her last finishes here.
Whose daughter is a decorated
Who's going to
freshman.
NAU.
Incredible.
Right.
Going to NAU this fall.
Yeah.
Like, absolutely insane running genetics going on there.
You know, speaking of 10-year anniversaries, too, this is the 10-year anniversary of Billy Yang's great film, Western Time, which features Sally McRae. So if you have time in between all of our coverage this week, go watch that great film on the amazing Sally McRae. Shout out to all the moms in the field. We already mentioned this, but absent, unfortunately, is last year's 4th place finisher, Katie Asmuth, who we all know and love, who would have added a lot of extra talent to this.
Talent and pizzazz, but she will be here. She's going to be helping us out with a few things later this week. You will know when Katie arrives in Olympic Valley come Thursday evening.
Yeah.
You know, I actually had a question on this. Like, maybe we could throw it around real quick. You know, there have been numerous studies over the last couple of decades about, you know, possible physiologic changes that happen after pregnancy and why in endurance sports you see women actually reaching their peak postpartum. I'm wondering, how much do you think it is related to that, or just changing the perspective where now they have they've changed the way they see life, and now the things they're seeing are changing. And I think just in general, sort of the overall, kind of outlook has differed as now they have something to care for.
As a person who's not yet a mother, but who has lots of friends who are moms, I do think I think it's probably multifactorial, right? That no one knows how their pregnancy journey is going to go. No one knows how their return postpartum is going to be. That could greatly change your experience running. But I think for any moms towing the start line, there are obviously barriers and hurdles that need to be cleared to get their training in, to get to the start line at all. But they've got communities rallying around them to get them here. And I think more than anything, they understand. I talked to Rachel Drake about this like 10 days ago. And she was saying that, she recognizes how special this opportunity is. She knows how busy she is, and just getting to be on the start line feels like a gift. And I think for any of us who have returned from injury, for any runners who have returned postpartum, I do think that you just have the gift and the joy of running and getting to be doing something that's maybe a little bit selfish, but also is very joyful for your whole family. So I think it's likely multifactorial. I'm sure there's physiological factors at play, but I think it's also just the gift that running keeps on giving.
But at the same time, it is hard. Like you said, you do have to
hurdles.
make sacrifices to get your training in to race against the best athletes in the world.
There are a lot more dads on the start line than moms, and there are reasons, even as we are very progressive, there are reasons why moms don't oftentimes make it back to the start line. And there are amazing organizations that we work with, like She Races, who's been working with races like Western States to adjust things like pregnancy deferral policies to really benefit moms instead of punishing them for missing their qualifier to get back into the lottery or whatever it might be. And I think that is just really, really important.
So building off this, our number 6 storyline of the 2024 Western States 100, Rachel Drake, who we just mentioned, a mom, and her husband, Tyler Green, a dad, coming to duke it out against some of the best athletes in the world simultaneously together. Both have an interesting story coming into the race. You want to get us started?
I mean, can we talk about a couple that we love more than just about anything? We will say this all week, that you and I are very biased, but we're biased to the entire field, basically. I feel like everyone racing is a dear friend of ours, which makes this whole experience very special. But I mean, you've got Tyler, who's a Western States professional. He has gotten this race done. He is a tactician. Surgical execution on this race. He knows the heat stuff. He has raced very conservatively here. He's raced really aggressively here. He hasn't found that top spot yet, but he's been second twice and fourth in the last 3 editions of this race.
And remember when he finished 4th, he was on the track when
it was a sprint.
Arlen Glick was on the track too, who finished 3rd
It
just
was
ahead
a
of him. So
sprint.
he was like, like by the
There.
skin of his teeth, not a 3-time podium finisher in a row.
And Rachel's been along for that ride the entire time. She has paced and crewed him at each one of those races. She's been at Western States training camp. We've watched her run across the line pregnant with Tyler. We've watched her run across the line twice with Lou. It's really, really magical to have the whole family here as well. And so I do think that, we're going to talk about debutantes in a little bit, Rachel Drake being one of them. But if you are going to debut at Western States, having Tyler Green as your husband and coach is probably a pretty good way to come in very, very prepared.
Tim?
I agree. And, the one thing I would say, it'll be interesting to see how it plays out, is that normally, as we know, like, ultra running is such a team sport, and often your significant other is like your crew, like head crew chief. And so now the fact that, and they've both supported each other over their entire careers, now they're both in the race at the same time. So they're going to have to rely on someone outside of that inner circle to really know what they need, when they need it, and how to give it to them. And at the same time, if they're getting word that something's going wrong, how does that play into Tyler's head? If it's like, hey, Rachel's really struggling, can he stay in the competitive mindset or
compartmentalize
and pull it out? Because I know personally, I've been in marathons with my wife, and if I get word that she's doing, like, if she's struggling, if she gets word that I'm struggling, it's really hard to.
I think they're going to lie to them the whole day.
Yeah.
I think unless Rachel actually finds
So
Tyler
crew,
in the course.
lie.
They're going to lie for sure. But we'll also see this too with returning Leah Yingling. Her husband Mike is actually. Will be working Western States weekend on another project, so he will not be on her crew this year. We'll be out there, but not her crew. And it's like these athletes have put together just the most amazing support systems.
Yep.
And so I think that their crews are going to lie to them for sure.
Yeah.
If Tyler's having a hard day, Rachel's not going to know about it unless she finds him.
I just think
and vice
Tyler
versa.
and Rachel are the type of people who are, such professionals, and they have such
and
love for each
they
other.
They want
and it feels like
cougars.
they have their own,
They want cougars.
they have
want
personal
cougars.
stability, right? Like, I feel like they take their own profession very seriously too, and they will be able to compartmentalize. But we, like you said, Corrine, are biased for everybody, but certainly Tyler and Rachel, some of the fan favorites. Just for our audience here, Tyler, 5 years in a row, 14th, 2nd, 4th, 2nd. Rachel, like we said, making her 100-mile debut here at Western States. I can't think of another example of a married couple coming in as 2 of the legit favorites to win, right? Like, there's obviously been a lot of examples probably of 2 married couple or two people from a couple who have competed here at Western States. I can't think of another example of 2 people who legit have chance at the Cougar trophies. Tyler and Rachel, good luck.
Can you imagine that, taking 2 cougars home to their house?
You got bookends. That's so great.
Yeah.
You gotta buy an extra Samsonite.
I just feel that might be a little selfish. They should share the love with the rest of the field.
Definitely.
Yeah, two cougars in one household. That's not fair. So we'll share the love.
I'm not sure if we mentioned this also, but they are also balancing a move cross country from Portland, Oregon, where they've lived for many years, to Salt Lake City, Utah, which they've done just in the last couple of weeks.
Yeah,
so.
they moved on June 4th. They hosted myself and Hillary Yang shortly after their move. And I will say that there was a surprisingly low number of boxes left unpacked when we arrived. And it was just, they're so settled in, and to move to that they obviously had an amazing community in Portland, but I got to witness them in their Salt Lake City community. And Salt Lake City is going to show up in a big way at Western States, I think. And watching them already just so integrated into that like lovely running community there was really, really special. So the move I think was a lot, but at the same time, I did the move Monday of Western States week in 2018 because my husband was starting medical school, and he's like, we have to drive to California anyway. We might as well just move this week. So he had to carry all the boxes up 4 flights of stairs to our 4th story walk up. So they did it a little bit better than us. They went earlier, etc. But I do think that they
Good job, Steven.
adjusted to make sure that they weren't too fatigued from
All
all.
right, let's move on here. We're running a little bit behind schedule, so blasting ahead to our 5th storyline of the Western States 100. The Masters course records are in serious trouble this year. The men's Masters course record has stood since 2013 when the great Mike Morton ran 15:45 on a tough day. I actually ran that year. Mike came blasting past me in Forest Hill on his way to his Masters course record. It stood for 11 years. Tyler, probably the person with the best chance. He just turned 40. His PR on the course he set last year in good conditions, but 15:04, so he's proven he can run significantly faster than that. I think the women's Masters course record is probably going to be the one that's more competitive, so maybe we'll start with that. The current course record is Ragna DeBot's from a couple of years ago, 2021, who ran 17:41, and there is a very talented group of Masters women who are going to be chasing that age group record. Tim, you want to get us started?
I was just going to tease Tim a little bit because I feel like Tim has strong feelings about both the men's Masters record and the women's Masters record.
I feel very invested in both of these storylines, and we'll start with the women. Last year, Ida Nielsen, the great Swedish champion, debuted her 100-miler, debuted Western States, and she ended up in 7th place and was 2 minutes off Ragna's course record, and I'd paced her the final 22 miles, and we were not aware of this as she was crushing, but I feel like if someone had mentioned it, we probably could have. Ida, she also, in your first 100, you kind of leave a little in the tank, but she's back. She's apparently stronger than ever. Like, her training's been going really well. I 100% say that the women's course record will go down this year.
I mean, you have Ragna, the course record holder, in the mix. You've got Lauren Puretz, you've got Emily Schmitz, you've got Heather Jackson.
It might be shattered.
It could be shattered.
Yeah, and the conditions, we'll talk about that in a second, but that obviously plays a lot into the times that are, capable and realistic on the day. So we'll talk about that here.
I was going to say, Tim, why are you so invested in the men's course record?
So Tyler, as you have mentioned, he is going to be going. I can't imagine him not gunning for that record. But if he does take it, I told him when I saw him last, I said, hey, set a good time because I want to come for it. Because I will be turning 40 next year. And I think a lot of people, once you hit that, arbitrary barrier, suddenly your mindset shifts. It's suddenly a new sort of green field to chase. And so I really hope Tyler just knocks this one out. And as we've said, he's basically the most consistent runner in Western States history in the most recent times. And I have no doubt that if he has a good day, he will be setting a course record that will be very hard for any of us to chase, which will be really exciting.
Yeah, and he's just like such a special person too. So hopefully he gets it this year. Tim, you get it next year. And then, I turn 40 the year after that. So
hey. Oh, are you going to be my co-host when Dylan runs it?
Yeah, right. No,
I'll be there.
You'll have to pry the mic out of his cold
Moving on,
hands.
before we do, I just want to tell our audience that tomorrow here on the Freetrail channel, we're going to be dropping one of our boy Ryan Thrower's latest artistic creations, a video about Tyler Green and Rachel Drake. We followed them on a critical training day just a couple of months ago in their home in Portland, Oregon, before they made that move to Salt Lake City. So again, make sure you're subscribed to the channel and watch the video tomorrow when it goes live on the Freetrail channel. Building off something I was just talking about, the weather forecast does play into what times are realistic here on the Western States course. The weather forecast is always a storyline here at Western States. Moving to number 4 storyline this year. Last year was a very cool year. We talked about that here in the broadcast. Women's course record went down hard. Men's course record wasn't very close. Tom Evans about 30 minutes behind Jim Walmsley's ridiculous 14:09 mark from 2019. This year, we're looking at a high of 84 degrees in Forest Hill. Last I checked, 89 degrees in Auburn. So below average temperatures.
Chilly.
Tim, you want to get us started on just like the heat and that storyline that's always present at Western States?
The heat at Western States is the storyline. This is what makes it such an iconic race. Very rarely do you find a 100-miler that goes through such a range of temperatures, from very cold, potentially in the high country in the first 30 miles, to scorching hot 100-plus degree temps in the canyon. And I think what I'm excited about with this is, I guess we're going to really see what the heat does for the field. However, if we look at last year, the 10th runner for men was 15:54.36, and it was a high of 80, a low of 51. And if you go back almost a decade to 2014, it was a hotter year, which was 89 degrees, and the top 8 were 15:56. And so if we're looking at temperatures in that 89 degree, I think we could see very similar times to both of those, a decade ago and last year. And I think one thing I'm actually really excited about is I wanted a hotter day because of all the men and women that crushed last year. I think they are going to be coming in with a lot of confidence, and it'll be interesting to see how they deal with a slightly hotter year out there.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with all of that. I am the person who's always like, give us the worst weather possible. That makes our job so much more exciting. Carnage is an excellent feature of a 100-mile race, and we haven't been treated to as much carnage as of late. People are racing smarter. They're utilizing more cooling strategies. I do know that, like when you raced a decade ago,
I never once used an ice bandana. And so this was one of the things I wanted to bring up is like the heat management is so advanced now that it feels to me like it's almost solved. Obviously, you still have to, on a day that's 89 degrees, implement cooling strategies to ensure you can race to your potential. And there's so much science behind this now, and the athletes have become so professional that they really are, coming here to Western States with a very technical, detailed strategy of how they're going to approach the heat. And I was also going to say, like, when it's hot, though, it does become more of an execution game, right? When it's cooler, it's more of a talent game, if you know what I mean.
I don't like cold years.
So this year, below average, still warm. Maybe it splits the difference there. Partially an execution game, partly a talent game. I know that's always the case in 100-mile racing, especially at something like Western States, but it'll be really interesting to see how it plays out. The other thing that the weather impacts is that there's no snow in the high country.
Which was a big deal last year. We talked to a lot of athletes after the race, and something that a lot of them reported was that they were getting lost. They were falling down. They were like trying to follow they had to group up because grouping up meant that they could follow pin flags better. Otherwise, they'd be veering off course consistently. So I do think that there not being snow in the high country makes navigation easier, makes that they all had to be on, they said. You mentally just had to be so focused that entire time, and they don't have to do that this year in the high country, which I do think will allow for more expeditious racing. But I will say, if you're listening to this right now and you're racing on Saturday, even though we're talking about it being like sort of not that hot, I would still advise you to use all the ice that is available to you. I'm looking at Ryan Thrower. Because it turns out that 89 degrees is like still warm and the sun is still hot, and cooling yourself down allows you to absorb nutrients and like cool yourself off and like continue for your gut to work all race long, and that stuff is just really, really important.
89 degrees is still hot. Let's get that out there.
Yeah.
It's still
not
hot.
cold.
But one thing I think it will be fascinating, especially for the men's race, is Jim is the king of Western States. We know he knows how to run in the heat. Obviously, he can run in any temperature, but when it isn't as hot as those brutally hot years like 2021 and 2022, I think it opens the door for some of these debutantes or other runners to give him a challenge because they don't have the experience that he has, but they don't need it because it's not as hot.
It's a good point, and we'll remember the year that he broke the course record, 14:09, a cool year. Yes. That was the only time he'd ever been like legit challenged.
And he was running scared.
Jared Hazen, who was 17 minutes back at the end, but he was within 10 minutes for a lot of it. But obviously, that's what probably pushed Jim to that historic mark, which I think is going to stand for a long time unless the great Jim Walmsley breaks it himself. Moving on, storyline number 3, 100-mile debutantes. There's a few very talented new 100-mile runners here making their first journey at the Western States for 100. Corrine, you want to get us started?
I mean, I'm always excited for a debutante. I actually had to remind myself that Lottie Brinks has in fact run 100 before at Javelina, because I was like, oh, she's a debutante. She in fact is not. But we do have a number of debutantes, including the likes of John Albin and Rachel Drake, who I think we are all very, very, very excited to see race. We've got to add people like Lauren Puretz to that mix as well. And in my mind, too, the big thing about debutantes is that I don't want to call it beginner's luck, because that's like obviously not accurate. It's not beginner's luck by any means. They're very, very talented. But I do think when you haven't run 100 before, you also
It's a blissful ignorance.
You don't fear it, right?
You don't know what you don't know.
Yeah. Exactly. And so I do think that oftentimes coming back for your second year can actually be way harder, because you're like, you remember that it hurt. You remember that the heat was hard. You remembered what your feet felt like. You have all that kind of fear and or like discomfort associated with it.
Or if it went okay, you think that it's
okay
easy and
again,
it's gonna be good, right?
All of us have had wild success and then had like just awful seasons or awful races, and you're like, oh, that race was easy. I didn't realize that at the time. So I do think that being a debutante at Western States, which while it is a bold strategy, I guess Petter Engdahl in that mix, he started UTMB and did not finish. So this would be his first finish at the distance. But I think that there's a little bit of magic being a debutante that we're only afforded once in our lifetime.
And I think this was something at the very top of the show. I was thinking about not having M1 and M2 coming back. I thought was actually a good move on their parts, because for what you're saying, sometimes you have that, you have the good run, and then you expect it to go even better the second time. But when you don't know what you don't know, sometimes that is actually helpful. And so on a race like Western States, I think we actually could extrapolate from the data that most people have a harder second run out there than they do the first time. But fun fact, and let's not tell Jim Walmsley this, but I was working on a blog. I didn't really, but I was thinking about titling a blog that would say, Jim Walmsley will not win the Western States 2024 title. And this is why. And it was going to say Jonathan Albin. Just because I think if we may talk about him, but he has experience over the 24-hour distance, but he's a debutant at Western States. Yeah. It could totally, go wrong for him. But I think he's one of the men in the field that could legitimately give Jim a scare.
Yeah. So, point well made. And I was just going to say, John Albin, Rachel Drake, Petter Engdahl, Ingvild Kaspersen, all debutants, all with a legit chance to win. Yeah. So that's a really interesting storyline for our viewers to follow. I also had a couple historical anecdotes that I think people will appreciate. Adam Peterman won on debut. Magda Boulay won on 100-mile debut. Stephanie Howe won on a 100-mile debut. Tracy Garneau back in 2010, I believe, was 100-mile debut. Anita Ortiz, 2009, 100-mile debut. So there is precedent. It can be done. Watch out. John Albin, Rachel Drake, Petter Engdahl, Ingvild Kaspersen. Let's see if they can add their name to the list. Moving on and building off of this, international runners. This is our number 2 storyline. Western States, in our time in the sport, has become a global race, legitimately, just as trail running has become a global sport. Here we have some of the best international athletes from all corners of the globe assembling. Corrine, you want to get us started on some of the international depth?
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned just a handful of Scandinavian athletes there, or athletes living in Scandinavia, because I know John Albin is from the UK, but does reside in Norway with quite a training posse.
Incredible.
I will say, including Petter Engdahl and Ingvild Kaspersen oftentimes as well. But then you add to that, too, we've got our first ever, I think, Latin America golden ticket winner in Jupiter Herrera, who won or was second at Black Canyon back in February. You've got the return of Shen Jingsheng from last year's debut at Western States in 4th. Incredible performance there. And there are I think 5 other Chinese athletes that we expect to see just really make a statement this year, who are, I think, for the most part, making their debut at this race as well, making not their 100-mile debut, but their Western States debut.
Yeah, okay, so I categorized this, so we'll just tick through some of these. But again, you mentioned the Scandinavian field. John Albin, a symbolic Scandinavian, a Brit, but who lives in Norway. Petter Engdahl, Ingvild Kaspersen. Asian athletes, Shen Jishen, who you just mentioned, Fu Zhao Zhang, Anna Lee, Ji Duo, Li Chen, and Gumin Deng, all in the field. The Euros, Elsie Davis, Esther Chilag, Ida Nilsson, Simone Gosselin, Robert Hodnall from Romania.
Julia Vinko as well, out of the Nice race.
Another person who I'm going to talk about a lot this week, the Kiwi, Mr. Danny Jones in the field. Also,
amazing race last year, but then also, did we mention our Romanian athlete out of Doyenthenan?
Well, Robert Hodnall.
Yeah, exactly.
He's been on the podium at UTMB.
But making his Western States debut. So it's like the Europeans, the Chinese athletes, the Scandinavian enclave, so to speak. It is going to be a who's who of international stars.
Okay, so
Speaking
that is
stars.
10 through 2. Moving on to the number 1 storyline of the Western States 100. The king is back. Mr. Jim Walmsley, welcome to Trailgating. Have a seat, everybody. Big round of applause.
On in, Jim.
The
Come
3-time
on in.
champion, the course record holder. Thank you for your patience. I know you've been waiting for our loud, obnoxious asses to shut the heck up and bring you on stage. Jim, welcome back. It's good to see you, buddy.
Hey, thanks for having me. Nice digging the setup. Yeah, pretty sweet.
It's got Jim's approval.
Yeah, there we go.
Well, I mean, the obvious question is, 2 years away, you moved to France, you've been back for a couple of months. How does it feel to be back in the United States? How does it feel to be back at Western States?
Yeah, I think it's 3 years. 3 years since I raced in the U.S. For an ultra now, I guess. Broke that
2
rust.
people have won the race.
Broke that on
since
Friday.
Yeah. And then, it's been nice. We got back to Flagstaff in November, but then it was also really nice. We went back for March to Aresh Beaufort and visited everyone for no particular reason other than to go skiing and have fun. And but then since getting back at the end of March, it's been getting ready for trying to tune things up to show up prepared and ready to try to run Western States again.
So last time we chatted was on the Trail Runner of the Year pod that we did at the end of the last year. You said you were planning to start your season at Trans Gran Canaria. You did not start there.
Yeah.
You finally ripped the Band-Aid off last weekend. Why don't you just fill us in on what happened this spring, why you chose not to race there, and sort of how your training's been?
Well, I had an ankle roll in December that thought I had kind of gotten through, and then just fully ruptured everything in January 2nd, I think, actually. I think 2 different, 31st and the 2nd had 2, then it was done, MRIs, reset. So more or less there wasn't anything rushing back from that. It was just the decision to play patient, and I guess a bit of a question whether to try to fit something else in. And I think I was kind of eyeballing maybe something in April, but things coming back from that didn't go smooth. So just patient, and yeah, we're opening up this year at Western States, which all in all, given the grand scheme of, as Tim knows, the double at Western States and UTMB is incredibly tricky, and perhaps could be a bit of a key on accident to actually open up later just at Western States. But that goes back to getting in the ticket back to Western States at Nice last year, and huffing and puffing and trying to do that a month after UTMB, and just felt like an awful decision throughout the whole thing.
Speaking of Nice, your training partner and good friend Simone Gosselin also got in at Nice. What is it meant to have him? He's actually been hanging out in Flagstaff, right? Getting training in?
Yeah. Simone and Laura have been with us in Flagstaff, living with us at the house, and it's been awesome. I think I've kind of realized that his new perspective in light on a race that I've done several times now has brought just so much energy to my training block. And so maybe I'm helping him with some tips and this and that, but I think it's easy to overlook how much his new perspective has really, I don't think I would be as prepared today without him being there and as excited about everything and excited to see things in Arizona. And oh, like you said, this is really hot, like we should try it, or like, oh, we got to get back, and just he's excited about it, and it's brought such good energy for me coming back for my 6th Western States.
So you guys have been able to push each other in training a little bit.
Yeah,
That's
yeah.
awesome. Backing up a step to something you just mentioned, I mean, to me, it feels like it would be hard psychologically to come in without like a big tune-up to assess fitness. So what kind of metrics or physical sensations do you use to evaluate that you're actually ready? Because you are coming back after a long break from ultra racing to the biggest stage in the world, a place that you've been really successful at. How do you know you're ready?
I think it's a bit of a risk, straight up, like a little bit of a risk. I like to have more of a pre-race in my legs, because I think traditionally that's how we kind of look at hardening the legs. But I would say that's also where years ago, as a younger version of myself, I would have rushed back and made sure I got something in training or got something in racing that proved I was ready to come back. And now there's a lot more with even on, Simone was explaining running around Flagstaff, the difference between and Aresh. We're running around and I'm just not paying as attention to the times and stuff on climbs, but when we run in Flagstaff, I know every rock and every climb and who has what and the effort that it takes, and what time do you want to run this and that. So yeah, maybe things are too calculated in Flagstaff, but even more than like trying to push like, oh, I should go get like an old segment or this or that or prove this, it's been more about trusting my effort level even at slower times, because I feel like coming more in tune with effort involved with the time, and not how fast it was, but how did it feel is much, much more important of what I take out of my training these days. And I think a lot of the sensations I've had in training go to things are ready to race Western States.
And to that point, I really view athletes as artists, and our canvas is the trail or whatever domain that we compete in. And you, in our generation and probably every generation, have really been one of the greats, where some of your performances should be in the Louvre. Well, let's just say that right now. But as you're coming back for your 6th one, do you think back to those first 5 and are there times that you would want to like replicate some of those things, or is this a blank canvas and you want to actually just say, let's add to my quiver, my entire portfolio, and let's let it rip?
Well, I think my story with Western States is maybe taught me more than anything, especially because I tried to just full gas attack it from the beginning of when I got in the sport. And I think I've explained before to I feel like I missed out on learning to race 100. I just went and started pitching, and it wasn't what I imagined and thought it was, and didn't work out exactly right. And you make small mistakes that end up cracking into the race falling apart. And I think perhaps I still have the same ambitions. However, I think my toolbox is just built up more to handle the little mistakes, and it's just a little mistake now instead of evolving into anything worse.
So I think, like, just touching on confidence for a second, I think a lot of athletes either get confidence from their training or they get confidence from racing. You did do something on Friday, the Broken Arrow VK here at Palisades Tahoe, where you finished second, not that far behind, like, the world's best uphill runner. Like, walk us through deciding to get this workout effort in and what it meant to actually put together what I think was a very good VK.
Well, yeah, I guess I've gone Strava dark, and then I was like, how do I really, there's no way around it if I choose to do the race. Like, it is what it is. I'm showing at least one card, but at least it went well. I think I made it 9.5 minutes on my watch with Patrick before we were on the fire road on the vertical race. And his motor was just very different on Friday. So that's where I was cutting my losses and looking behind. And then I have the two fresh out of college guys, 1330 guys that still are doing workouts and have leg speed. And I'm just like, oh no. And but I think the only crusty guy that brought some poles up the hill, and it might have paid off a little bit towards the 19% finish.
The old man poles were out in full force.
Jim has no idea that Mika absolutely devastated us in his post-race interview over poles.
We were making a joke about they should have brought us a walker onto the set because they joined us for the show. And Mika goes, that's what poles are for.
Yeah.
But a good stat from the Broken Arrow VK.
I think I was telling people I was tapping on the downhill just to let them know I had poles. Because I remember 2021 being in UTMB, coming out of Courmayeur. I'm with Francois. We're climbing out. I haven't been feeling all good all race, and I chose not to do poles that year. And the mental just devastation I had of having to tempo behind him, uncomfortably hike behind him, lose ground, and then tempo back up. And he's just got this steady pace with poles. I'm like, poles.
But you learn.
Full circle.
And I'm just like, I got to get in their head. I only have 10 more minutes. I got to get in their head. Tap, tap, tap.
But a good stat from Broken Arrow. The oldest person in the top 10 at the VK across men and women, the 34-year-old Jim Walmsley. Unbelievable.
Yeah, it doesn't feel like that. I still feel like the young guy making this, maybe not the same mistakes, but still finding new ways.
I mean, it's crazy. Time flies. I mean, Mika's 24. It's like, geez. Christian's 26. I think he's got 3 kids. It's like, wow, the next generation is here in a big way. Yeah. But, keeps us all motivated, doesn't it?
Yeah, I hope that it has a little bit of an influence of maybe the young guys like that are considering the World Mountain Series and the Golden Trail Series or shorter races, get surprised a little bit by a guy getting ready for Western States and go, well, maybe that racing's pretty cool too. And as a college kid, I didn't consider that so much. I shunned it a lot.
Well, we had Anna, so I love this mesh of Anna Gibson using the VK to tune up for the 1500 on the track at trials. She races on Thursday in the first rounds, and you tuning up for Western States. This perfect marriage in the VK was just really special.
Well, also, I think it deserves to be emphasized that there are very few people in the world who can run a 35-minute Broken Arrow VK and be right on Patrick's heels and win UTMB, Like most of the people who are competitive there. You throw Mika, obviously, Christian, they're sick talented. There's no question that they could eventually compete at UTMB, but it would require a learning curve. There's very few people who can do both, and you and Killian are the only people that come to mind who can.
For now, yeah. I think many more are coming.
One of the things I wanted to talk to you about is sort of the nature versus nurture of your arc here at Western States and your dominance and your success. Because I was thinking about, Killian and how he grew up being in the mountains, hiking around, skiing around, and he's got the talent, the nature, so to speak, of that God-given VO2 max, but also the nurture of his parents just let him run around. And clearly he's been hyper successful based on that combination. You have the nature, the great talent, but you're born and raised in Phoenix. How does that map to your success here at Western States? Like, do you feel uniquely built for this race?
Well, I definitely get pretty surprised of what's now happened at UTMB, and going back to Phoenix and going, a kid from here did that, of like, it just seems almost impossible because it's two different worlds. However, I still can remember as a kid growing up and thinking nothing of the heat, that this is normal and this is what kids just go play in 120. Or maybe my parents said, don't go outside today, but I don't remember being told that. And if we wanted to go outside during the summer break, like, we just went outside, we rode bikes, we made jumps and did normal things. And that mentality of being in the heat, not thinking of it. I mean, growing up, getting heat stroke plenty of times, having mistakes like that, but also culturally, probably knowing how to take care of yourself in the heat. Instincts kick in at Western States, and how I read myself getting hot. I think there's probably a deeper instinct with that. I think it's learnable. It's probably the same way I've been able to learn a few things at least to do better in the mountains, but there's still like learnable things you can do in the desert and hard climates to survive a little longer.
So I think I'm just going to piggyback off of what or an extension. We mentioned you're still young. You're 34. There are younger guys. And so I'm sure you don't think about this, but I am curious. Legacy. You obviously have an incredible portfolio of races over the last decade, really. And do you think about what you want to accomplish moving forward? There are a lot of, analogous or in other sports where, people see the double-double in the Olympics, or they go out and set world records. But, and we've seen great champions win Western States, win Hard Rock, win UTMB. For you, I feel like you've always kind of set the path on your own. You kind of, take your own shot. Are there things out there that you really want to be tackling outside of, 10 Western States wins, to set yourself apart?
I'm very far away from 10. I'm only at 3. And who knows? I think it's always such a nice journey because you never know when's the last one. And so you have to cherish each step of it. And more or less, though, I don't see it going away. Probably 2 big reasons. One, I still think the biggest, hardest competitors to beat in the 100-mile distance are still older than me. Francois, Killian, you. No, but seriously, like there's like guys in the sport, and Courtney on the women's side, and other women, and Camille doing flat ultras, really just incredibly world record fast. There's plenty of examples for me to still not feel like necessarily the old runner in the field. If all you guys are still winning, then my goals aren't changing. So there's a lot, at least ahead of me. I guess the new part is now there's also new people behind, and that will always be constantly changing and stuff. But the process and the love for that is still there. So showing up at the races is kind of just cherry on top. The fun, the pain, the addiction, whatever it is. It's just a small part of it, though.
Yeah, so I'm kind of curious. Obviously, it's all eyes on Western States this weekend, but there is something kind of big on the horizon that, in particular, has eluded men predominantly in the sport, and that's that Western States to UTMB double. You were the first American man to kind of finally get it done this past year in August at UTMB. While I know you're focused on this Saturday, is there anything in the back of your mind thinking ahead to knowing that there's this other opportunity of this being maybe the year to accomplish what is a historic double?
Not really. I mean, it's been done. Killian did it. So no.
2011. Yeah.
2011.
It's been a little
Nikki
while.
Campbell did it in 05-ish.
Yeah.
And
not the
Courtney
first by
did
any
it.
means.
But I mean, yeah, it's still, even if you do it in 1 year or career. I think it's the same group. No?
Well, then maybe another question is,
But-
how do you compartmentalize the two, you know?
You downplay it.
Yeah,
I
okay.
downplay it. No, my
Because you
goal
can't
is
save
to
yourself.
be
You
my
can't
goal
save
is to be podium at both. If I could have complete races and feel good about having my own good race, then you see where the cards land. And if I can consistently be towards my best, then I'm happy. Like, I'm really happy with my uphill run, even though I don't get second or not win too often, and sometimes that selection of races and this and that. But I'm really proud of like still competing hard and not getting caught by the young guys behind me and being in the sprint finish. But and yeah, fighting through that. 40 minutes is a lot different than 20 hours, but it starts with the first step of Western States and just trying to get my best performance here, because without performing here, then the double's nothing. So not nothing, but then there's not much of a double if I don't finish here. So it's really just taking care of the first step and focusing here and keeping those blinders on.
Yeah, because there will be people out there trying to figure out, like, you can't save yourself on Saturday,
I'm not
right?
saving
It's all in on
No.
Saturday. There's no
Yeah.
way to save yourself.
So then building off this a little bit, I mean, the obvious question is, you know, what's motivating you right now? Because you are the 3-time champion, you are the king, you are the course record holder. But yeah, part of it is like, this is new, this is different. Their competition are guys like John Albin, Dakota Jones, Shen. I don't think you've raced any of these guys at 100 miles, have you?
Not at 100 miles. I've raced John once.
At Templier or?
I've raced him at the 2019 World Mountain Running Championships
Okay.
in the marathon distance. But and Hayden was in that race too. Yeah, I guess I raced Daniel last year.
But is that something that motivates you? You know, it is like a new cast
It
of
is,
characters.
but I think it's also just chasing your own tail
Yeah.
to want to prove yourself against the new crop. Like, so what? Like, just go get your best race, and we'll see where that lands. If they're better, they're better. If they're not, well, they're not. So it goes on, and just focusing more on yourself is way more important.
Do you want it in the same way that you did in 2016?
No, I needed it. I needed it in 2016. I had nothing to win in 2016, and that's one of my favorite races. And I still use those splits as consistent, good splits. And Freetrail bringing out the split stuff on your website, like through 85 miles, the splits are solid. Yeah. Something happened afterwards, I don't know, but
Travis is like the man who created that is in the chat right now, and he is absolutely losing his mind.
And then I also look at the splits from 2017 and just shake my head at remembering how bad the high country was that year and just forcing splits. And it was an insane run, and it ended in complete and utter heat exhaustion, like throwing up the rest of the night, just shivering, and then too hot and couldn't control, like classic heat stroke.
Fire and ice
couldn't do it.
Yeah, I remember pacing Alex Nichols, and we caught you just before the river crossing on that year, and it was really painful to see you in that state because we all knew you had the potential. As the dreamer, I know you've thought about sub 14. What do you think the variables are going to take to have a sub 14 performance? Because I'm in complete belief that it's happening.
Yeah.
I just don't know. Like, what are your thoughts on the sub 14 barrier?
Yeah, I mean, I've gotten asked that for a few years now. So my lessons learned are see how the legs are, and then take what the day gives you, rather than forcing my agenda on the race course on the day. They might say it's 85, but Auburn's a really finicky special place, and it could swoop to 95, and they're like, whoa, it was way hotter than we said it was going to be, and it's just like, thanks, like, I skipped all my ice because of that. Like, come on. You have to feel it, and you have to feel the right moment. And even, yeah, with new guys in it, like, how is someone else making a move? Am I going to be in a big pack? I mean, Tom and Dakota were locked in at Michigan Bluff before all of a sudden Tom solo, and then how does that change things? And then this year, I think Dakota's in really great shape and coming back. So yeah, I expect it to be a really hard-fought battle, and I think when you expect it, then you're ready for it. So there's no reason not to.
Amazing, dude. Well, we're grateful for your time. I have 2 very quick questions before we go. Number 1, I'd love to have you say a couple words about Patrick. You had me take a picture of the 2 of you together.
Yeah.
It's kind of cool to see you be a fan of somebody else. And also, we got to shout out Jess, who was also top 5 in the VK. She
So Jess got
ass.
5th in the vertical race in Broken Arrow this weekend, so we were really excited about that. I think she was a bit bummed initially to not do the 46K because I think it was a hip thing giving her some problems, but she got the okay to still do an uphill race, and she took the most of the opportunity. And I think the steep valley in Aresh has made us both stronger at going uphill, and she's flying. So that was really cool. And then Patrick, I mean, I've seen him. He won in Japan and then China in the Golden Trail earlier this year. I've seen him run at from afar. It's always been from afar and online or results, and this guy's running crazy times. His ITRA UTMB index stuff is off the charts. Like, how strong is he? And like, well, I found out he's that strong, and it was really cool. And just makes you wonder just how much untapped talent, especially in East Africa, there is. And then I'm so curious about Patrick and his team out based in the Austrian Alps and what they're doing. And they must have a really great support network out there to enable them to travel and perform consistently like this. Meanwhile, training and staying at such a level for extended period of times, like, it's really impressive.
Amazing. Jim Walmsley, you're the man, dude. Thank you for swinging by. We really appreciate your time. Good luck this weekend. Big round of applause for the 3-time champion, course record holder, Mr. Jim Walmsley. Thank you, buddy.
Yeah.
You can be excused. Thank you. I'm sorry we were late. Go put your feet up.
Appreciate it.
Stay cool. Okay, to our viewing audience, we'll just wrap things up here in a little bit. Corrine, Tim, comments, reactions after having the king in studio with us? Come on.
I was so starstruck that I forgot to ask the most important question, because we know that his brother's a big Weight Watchers fan, and I know he's been in dark mode, but I wanted to ask him if he's been following along. But I guess
his twin brother's coming to TrailCon on Wednesday, and we've had a section where you could put what brand you're representing, and he put Morton Salt, which I'm assuming is a joke, right? Your brother doesn't work for Morton Salt.
I've been loving Tim and Ryan.
You heard it here first. He said, check it out.
Yeah.
Tim and Craig Thornley. That was a great call.
Jim is behind the scenes saying he doesn't know anything about his brother's shenanigans on the TrailCon website, but he's enjoyed following #Weight Watchers.
But one thing I really picked up about what Jim said, and I loved it, is he's been in the sport for a decade. He's done incredible things, but he has also taken massive shots. He's called his shots, and he has failed. But you heard what he said at the end about how he's learning to approach each one differently. His quiver's gotten larger, and I think that just shows that over the next couple of years, including this weekend, he has a toolkit that no one else has, and it's exciting to think about the future of what is possible as he continues to put. And you could tell in his voice, he's got the fire, he's got the passion. None of that has gone away, and I'm here for it. I think it's going to be an incredible fight on Saturday and well beyond that.
It's a luxury to be asked the question, what motivates you at Western States, right? It's because, like, for all of us, it's like, to perform well. It's like, well, when you've won it 3 times, when you've run 14:09, like,
what else?
Yeah, what else?
No, but I
is
love
there?
that, like the like recognizing that, like, he needed it then,
Yeah.
and now it's like
love that.
there's a want, but before it was like we felt that need, right? We felt those mistakes, we felt the disappointment, the devastation, and that need, that hunger, and that hunger is still there, but that hunger has morphed into a different flavor.
And it's like one of the hallmarks of his career too, because he probably felt that same need for UTMB, right? And he has checked that off the list too. In fact, they sort of talk about that in the video that Ansel Dickey made about his journey with UTMB. Jim Walmsley, obviously a great champion, but part of the thing that makes his story so fun is that it takes him a while to figure it out. He never gives up. And when he figures it out in a way that few can ever dream of. Frickin' awesome conversation.
Where do we go from here? We
Okay.
started Monday on a high. But people are going to have to bear with us all week long.
Okay, closing comments from you, Tim. Anything else you want to add to today's show? Other things you're looking forward to?
You know, I would just say for everyone out there that is in the race, the 369 runners, really cherish this week. It's special. It's going to be harder and harder for people to have this opportunity. So make the most of it. Embrace the impermanence of every moment out there. And I would just encourage them as they are getting ready for the big day, try to spend time with your loved ones. Take a breath, and you can take confidence that all of the training is done, and just enjoy yourself this week. Like, don't overthink it. Nothing could be done to improve your place, but you could definitely derail yourself if you get in your own head too much. So just relax.
And here's the thing: it's for Jim or for the person who's going to be finishing at 29 hours and 59 minutes, it's still your Western States experience. It's still your day, your moment, potentially your once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, and you have to absorb the entire thing. And so it's like, exhale. I saw Emily Schmitz in the parking lot, and I said, I want you to be indifferent when I see you on Friday. I don't want you to be excited or nervous. I just want you to be like, let's go. Let's do this. And I think that's the vibe that we are all working our way towards.
Great thoughts to end the show on. Impermanence, indifference. What a gift to be here in Olympic Valley to share the miracle of the Western States 100. Before we go, obviously, smash the subscribe button, would you please? Well, I think we're just under 19,000 subs. Let's jack that over 19. In fact, let's get to 20,000 subscribers this week, please. You guys can help us out.
What's going to happen if we get to 20,000? What are you going to do?
Ryan's going to win the race if we get 20,000 subscribers.
You heard it here first.
Ryan Thrower will take home a cougar if we get to 20,000 subscribers. Please smash the subscribe button.
Craig Thornley, you're
My
listening
friend
to
Aaron
this.
Lutzi has told me that if you comment on the YouTube too, that might help us with the algorithm. Maybe hit the like button. Whatever you can do, we would certainly appreciate it. Also, before we go get your picks in for fantasy. Obviously, we're going to be doing a lot of analysis here in the next couple of days that will help inform your ballot, but you can start getting it situated now. I know I've been doing it already over the past week or so since Travis opened it. As Jim mentioned, you can check out the new split feature on fantasy.freetrail.com. For those stat nerds in the audience, it's a very cool thing, one of the coolest things we've ever done with fantasy. Big shout out to Travis Longcar. Tomorrow, we will be here again at 3 o'clock. We're going to be doing some stuff around the history of the Western States 100. We're going to be talking with John Trent, the author of Second Sunrise, former board president, the unofficial historian of the Western States 100. We'll also have some special guests. We'll announce all this stuff on social media, so go follow us on Instagram at Run Freetrail. A big thank you to the team on the studio here, Tim Tollefson, Corrine Malcolm, and behind the scenes, Ryan Thrower, bib number 389. 398, excuse me. Addie Thompson's here now, a great supporter of our team here. Tony D, Tony with a Sony on the ones and twos. And Harmony Bowman. A big thank you to Hoka also, Hoka.com. Go get yourself a pair of Speed Goat 6s before I come after you and force you to do it myself. Tim, Corinne, so fun. Day one was a success. We'll see everybody back here day two. Peace out.